Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm Sherry Zudenbergen. You were born, you're gonna die, and your adventure is your dash in between. So make the most of it. Unlock your potential in all aspects of your dash by embracing your uniqueness and living in a way that's authentic to you, not by doing more things, but by focusing on the right things. I'm a former corporate leader turned coach who's on my own journey, and I'm passionate about helping you on your journey too. So on the podcast, we'll explore how to live authentically by deciphering who you truly are and what you truly want. Are you ready to take a step toward designing your dash? Someday doesn't actually exist, so let's do it now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here at the Dash Mindset Podcast. Today, I have my friend Megan Thole here with me. Megan is founder of Hello Mindful You, and she just brings lots of calm, and she just has this soothing nature that you'll very much like, which I appreciate immensely. I need a lot of that in my life. I need more Megan in my life. Anyway, Megan and I met about 1 to 2 years ago. We were both speaking at an event, and so we've just been crossing our paths ever since, and it's been great. So anyway, Megan, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Sherry.
So Megan, can you tell us a little bit about what you do? Tell us a little bit about your journey to whatever extent you want, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, awesome. So my business, like you said, is called Hello Mindful You. So I started Hello Mindful You about a little over a year ago. So I think about 15 months ago. And I've known for a really long time that I wanted to own my own business, but never knew kind of where that fell. And so just for me, kind of my journey going through some personal challenges myself, dealing with infertility, some chronic illness, those types of things, I really started kind of diving into emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and a lot of those things for myself. I am someone who definitely identifies as a high achiever. And so that is something that has definitely helped me in many ways get to where I am in my life. And I feel like is something that was also no longer serving me. So when I kind of went down this journey of mindfulness and really just becoming more emotionally intelligent for myself, I really started to think about how could this help other people? And maybe this is a way that I get to kind of fulfill that dream or goal to be a business owner and do something that I love and that brings me joy and that can also help other people. And so that's really kind of how Hello Mindful You was born. I started sharing a little bit about some of the things that I was doing personally and really got some positive feedback from others in the sense that like, hey, Megan, I could really use this. I need this in my life. And so, really just started to test it out in some safe spaces and then decided to go for it. So with Hello Mindful You, I do leadership trainings around emotional intelligence, self-awareness, how to build resilience, some coaching. So I like to be in that personal growth space, whether it's individual coaching or just helping people, again, just really understand themselves better and see maybe how they're showing up in the world and how they want to be able to show up differently. And so I have, for over the last year, really been kind of playing in a lot of those spaces and connecting with a lot of really amazing people. I'm so happy that we connected at the conference, a little over a year ago. And I'm just super grateful to kind of be in the space and just trying to help others along the way and see where Hello Mindful You takes me and takes other people that are in my space and in my community.
I love your story so much. And I had the opportunity, obviously, to hear your story before we actually formally met because so what happened was I presented at this conference, an ATD conference. I presented, Megan was in the room, and then Megan presented in the same room immediately after me. And I'm me, right? And then then Megan, who's very soothing, and I think you even maybe did a meditation, if that's or maybe your whole nature is just meditative. I'm not sure. But then Megan spoke immediately after me, and it was just funny because some of the folks stayed for my presentation and then Megan. So afterward, Megan and I formally met, and I said it had to be a little jarring for individuals who saw my presentation and then Megan's because it was like I don't know, watching me is kind of like, well, relative to Megan, is like watching Pulp Fiction and then immediately turning to the Bob Ross channel. Not because I'm shooting up a coffee shop or, cussing up a storm or anything, but just, that relatively speaking, listening to Megan is very much just like, watching Bob Ross, like Happy Little Trees and, all the things. So it's funny because we do talk a lot about the same things, but our styles are so different. That's one thing I love is just how well we complement each other in that way.
Well, yeah, I think style's different, but then like also you talk about me sharing my personal story, but that was really cool for me was to get to hear some of yours too. And that's what I think is so beautiful about the coaching space, the training space, like all of the things that we're doing is that everyone brings their own unique perspective, that it's not a Megan or Sherry or again, whoever we're talking about. Like everyone has their own way that they're talking about these things of mindset, mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and brings that personal story that maybe someone connects with that, maybe they're not connecting with my story, but they're connecting with yours and that type of thing, which is what I really appreciate about the space is even though we might be talking about the same topics, our perspective on the topics and maybe how they resonate with us is different. And so we bring that different perspective to our work.
Well, there were a lot of reasons why I, absolutely wanted to introduce myself after your presentation, but one of them is because of the story you shared, and um, and you mentioned, you went through infertility, and that's one of the things that led you to being more mindful. And that's something that I experienced as well. So that was something that I really appreciated talking about afterward because it's one of those things that you don't just go around talking about, right? So, I mean, I immediately, upon hearing your story, felt a connection with you because, oh my gosh, she gets it, right? We can talk about this. So, yeah, that's so true. We all have, even when we experienced something that's similar, we still have a different spin on it, right? Or a different perspective on it. So, yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's probably like one of my favorite things is I try to remind myself, before a session or a speaking event or whatever it is to be authentic. And again, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. And sometimes that doesn't feel as safe depending on the spaces you're in. But I really try to be intentional in showing up in that way because of those moments that you're talking about. Like that's what makes all of the work worth doing is when someone comes up to you afterwards and says, "Hey, I really connected to this piece." Or maybe it's not your personal story, but it's a way you shared something. Hey, I never thought about something like this. And now I'm going to integrate this practice. Or again, even better, when you find someone you run into weeks later, months later, years later, and they're like, "Hey, remember this one thing you talked about? I continue to do this, or now this shapes how I think about this thing." Like that is everything. So yeah.
And have you ever had times when somebody will say, "Hey, remember talking about this?" And your reaction is just, no.
I feel like not necessarily. I feel like most stuff I can remember in concept, but what I run into is, how like you're putting stuff together for everything and it's like title, description. I'm like, man, if I could remember what I called every session, I'm like, yes, I know I have this thing coming up and here's like the general topics we're talking about. But if you ask me the specific title or what I decided to call it this time, no, I probably don't remember.
Right. Especially because you're probably looking through 17 different options or thinking about 17 different options and then trying to remember which one you landed on, like,
Right. And well, again, like you think about your audience too, right? So if I'm, delivering something for students, I might, revamp the title or something like that to make more sense there, where it's not like you're changing 100% of the content, but you're making it relevant to that group. And so, yeah, it can be easy to forget some of that. But yeah.
speaking of students, okay, can you talk a little bit about your, I'll say real job in air
Yeah.
quotes here, and how your work, what that looks like in that environment? Because something that you and I have talked about before is when we are in the work world, we don't really talk about mindfulness or any of this stuff that I used to think was super woo woo.
Right.
So, how does that look in your environment?
Yeah. So, in my day job, I guess we could call it, is I work at Kirkwood Community College. I'm the senior director of institutional planning. And so my role there right now doesn't involve a lot of day to day student contact. When I started at Kirkwood, I was in financial aid. So a lot of student interaction on a daily basis. So for me, how that looks like in my job, obviously as a leader at the college, I use that in how I'm showing up in meetings for my team, those types of scenarios. But it's been really cool to be able to see how I can partner with students. And so I was able to be a part of, there's a student leadership series that runs out of our student life office. And so I was able to be a speaker at that session. Again, if you're asking me the specific topic I talked about, I don't totally remember, but it was a really awesome session. I remember thinking, you never know what the student perspective is going to be as you're sharing about different things. And they were a super engaged group and it was really awesome. I left feeling super energized going in. I was like, oh, are they going to like me? Are they going to think, when is this lady going to be done talking? Like, what is the vibe going to be? And it was really awesome. And so the other groups that have been really cool to partner with is our nursing students and allied health students. And so they've been one really every year since I've been doing this that I partner with, and really thinking about students going into healthcare and the amount of stress that they are going to be walking into. They're a really good group to talk to because I think they understand the stress that they're going to be walking into and they want to find ways to actively manage that. If they're going to be a leader or manager in their space, they want to know that for their teams that they're going to be supporting. And so that's kind of how it's translated into some of my work there. We do we have different professional development opportunities. So I've done some Hello Mindful You at Work series there, which have been kind of fun. I like to do things that are short and sweet. And so I think sometimes with mindfulness, self care, taking care of ourselves in all of those different ways, we think we have to have hours. And sure, that would be really nice. And there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of us don't have that. And so for some of those sessions, I did, 30-minute sessions where we would do a gratitude practice. Maybe we would learn and build our own 15-minute mindfulness practice or things like that. So kind of short and sweet, just reminding us as even professionals in our workday, there are lots of opportunities to pause and reset and be able to take care of ourselves.
One thing I know I used to think, and I mean, now it's clear in retrospect, at the time I didn't really think about it, but I felt like self-care was, oh, going and getting a massage or doing something like that. And I don't know, I'm not even a big fan of the phrase self-care because it makes it feel like a thing. Just take care of yourself. If
Hmm.
like just put yourself first every once in a while. And when you were talking about nurses, I was just thinking about the fact that clearly people who decide to go into nursing are generally caregivers. They want to help people. And the people who are helping others have a tendency to put themselves last. And so it's just, I can't even imagine being in that environment and being a caretaker. And it's just so hard to see people being so helpful and putting themselves out there and then not considering themselves or taking care of themselves or feeling like they shouldn't, right? I mean, having some level of guilt around that. Can you share with us what are some of your tips to just incorporate into your normal day? What are some of the tips that you share with the nursing students, for instance? Because clearly they're running around taking care of people, and how do you do that?
Right. So I think a lot of the tips I share, again, short and sweet. So how can we incorporate some of these things into our existing habits? And so things like if we're brushing our teeth, if we're filling up our water bottle, if we're walking to the bathroom, like what are some things you can do in that short amount of time? So for some people, if you're someone who maybe likes to repeat a mantra, if there's something specific that you're either working towards or is on your mind, is bothering you, like that's something you can do. And again, you can do it while you're brushing your teeth. Washing your hands is another good one. Like we all talk about, especially this time of year, how do you get rid of germs? Well, spend time washing your hands. So is there something that you can actively be saying to yourself? Or maybe it's just that time where you take that pause and just notice how you're feeling, check in with yourself, because then you can take some action that maybe aligns with what you actually need. So when we talk about caring for ourselves, we have to think about, what do we actually need? We don't know that unless we actually take that pause to check in. And so I think those are kind of some big things that I typically suggest as quick, easy things. The other thing I really like to talk about that has been super beneficial for me is really just focusing in on your self talk. And so when we talk about mindfulness, a big piece of mindfulness is this non judgment piece. And so, of course, being non judgmental to others, but really, when we're talking about mindfulness, it's being non judgmental to ourselves. And so, I think this kind of piece of noticing, so noticing, are your thoughts negative? If they are, what can we maybe do to get out of that space? And so really just recognizing some of your thought patterns, which again can be incorporated into some of those daily habits. I think that's always really good, and nothing new to the scene, but gratitude practice. If you can, name 3 things you're grateful for, I feel like that instantly shifts your mood. I hate winter. And so it's like, okay, in the winter, when it's super cold, I hate going outside. It's like, I'm grateful to have a attached garage, so my vehicle can be parked inside. I'm super grateful to have a warm house. I'm grateful my heater hasn't broken, just like some of those types of things where it's honestly, I feel like when you have gratitude towards your basic needs, it just reminds you that everything else it doesn't really matter. And so then it takes you back to that place of, okay, there's a lot of things that I'm worrying about, thinking about that aren't actually important, right?
Yeah. And those are things we're reminded of when our heater goes out in December,
Right.
right? But up
Mhm.
until then, it's just we just take it as we take things for granted. I mean, we just
Absolutely.
do, and we know
Yep.
that. So what would you say for someone who says, okay, great. That all sounds fantastic, Megan. Thank you. But how do I actually do that? Because I think we all have these mantras. It's just some of them are negative, right? We don't even realize it because they're just spinning in our mind over and over. So when you first started this practice, what was your approach, and how do you stay mindful of mindfulness?
I think for me, again, I started super small because I knew I didn't have a ton of time. So, working full time, I have 2 little kids. I just knew I didn't have a lot of time. And that had always been the reason why I didn't take care of myself. I didn't maybe show up differently. So, that had always been an excuse. And so, I decided I wasn't going to be an excuse for me. So, I was going to start this like 5 to 15 minutes a day. I feel like it's pretty hard to argue with yourself that you don't have 15 minutes in your day to do something to take care of yourself. And so I started with that. For me, what was super helpful was to start with a body scan meditation, which is super simple. It's truly just checking in with yourself head to toe. And so, really just noticing, am I holding tension anywhere in my body? And so, for me, that was really powerful. I started doing that in the morning before I got out of bed. And again, takes a few minutes. But for me, as someone who was dealing with a chronic illness and chronic pain, what I realized is that I had been in pain for so long and been uncomfortable for so long that even though I was feeling better, I still was like feeling that pain. I'd wake up and be like, oh, I'm achy, my body hurts, whatever the case may be. And when I started doing the body scan, I realized that there were a lot more good days than there were bad days. And so it really forced me to check in with myself and actually notice, how am I actually feeling today versus how is my mind just telling me because it's just been, a repetitive pattern. So that's one thing that was really helpful. And then again, just noticing. Like, it sounds so simple that again, you question, is it actually effective? But if you don't notice your thought patterns, if you don't notice some of the habits, you can never change them. And so my advice is always to start in that space of just noticing. And I think the difference with mindfulness is you're noticing simply to notice. You're not noticing to judge yourself. You're not necessarily noticing to fix. You're just noticing. Because when you start to notice what you're doing, it gives you that space to pause and choose what you want to do. So when I noticed I wasn't feeling pain, then I had the choice to get up out of bed and like get rid of that mentality. When I notice I'm talking negative to myself, then I have that space to choose. Am I going to keep talking to myself this way, or am I going to find another way to speak to myself? And so noticing some of those patterns helps you figure out what are the next steps that I want to take. If I am having a lot of these negative thought patterns, maybe then you can start to think about, where does that come from? And then I really like to help people kind of question that, right? Like, we're almost like fact checking ourselves, because so much of what we tell ourselves can feel really true when in reality it's not. And so, like, we talk about sometimes like the stories we tell ourselves, right? And so it's really checking in on those stories, and are they actually factual?
Right. Because a lot of them are just stories that we've come up with, and we act like, oh, well, this is true because that's what my brain is telling me. But someone else may have had the exact same experience, and they applied a completely different meaning to it. And it's like, oh, well, we
Right.
feel like, oh, well, that's wrong.
Right.
We're right. That's wrong.
I think about the like waiting, right? So if you say like we have a speaking event and you leave and like you don't get any immediate feedback, I mean, your brain goes to like, oh, that must have been terrible because nobody's talking to me about it and I think it was bad. Or you email someone to be following up with something or whatever the case may be. And your mind instantly goes to this place of, I suck.
Right.
They're never going to contact me. I'm emailing them. They think I'm annoying. When in reality, you put yourself in that place. You know this because like we text back and forth. I suck at responding. I read it and I respond in my head and then I just like go on with my life. And then a couple days later, it's like, oh, hey, Sherry, here's this thing we talked about. Like, sorry, I didn't mean, I'm not forgetting about you. There's things in my inbox. Like, we're all prioritizing what's immediate for us. And so especially in business, of course, when you're reaching out to people you want to work with, like, it is your top priority, but the people you're reaching out to have a million other things that they're doing. So you might still be on their list, but if they don't respond immediately, your mind starts to think like, maybe this didn't go as well as I thought it did. Again, all of those things. And so I think that just goes back to like, we have to start to notice those thought patterns, and like our brain is playing tricks on us at that point, because there's nothing like, what facts do we actually have that, one, our speaking session sucked, or two, this person's never going to respond to us. And when we start to look for them, we don't have any.
And it's funny, I don't know that I've ever spoken to someone else who's presented and not had that thought at some point, oh, I sucked. Everybody hated me. I mean, how crazy, right? When we really stop and recognize that we're having that thought, that is ridiculous.
Right. And like, you would not like, again, if you're supporting someone there, like, that's never what would happen. But I do think that sometimes is the hard thing about speaking engagements, is you don't always get the opportunity to sometimes engage with your audience, which again kind of gives you some of that like immediate feeling and feedback. Like, yes, you can kind of read the room with faces, but sometimes depending on topics, especially mindset type stuff, like, you have the people who are like, yes, you could tell they're super into it. And then there's the others that are like straight faced the whole time. And you're like, are they totally spacing out? Are they here? And then they're the same people that will come up then, later and be like, hey, this one thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think you were paying attention. But like, you got the biggest like epiphany from this session. And so it's such a hard read in the room. And so I always appreciate, like speaking events, workshops, like talking to people afterwards, not just looking for that feedback, but looking for that connection too, because I think all of us that are in that space, you appreciate connection. You don't just go to speak and leave. You want to connect with your audience and other people in the space.
And I love that this also applies to, I mean, relationships with family, when, relationships with colleagues in meetings. I mean, I think a lot of times in a meeting, you might think, oh, that person totally disagreed with me. Like, we apply our own story to each person who's in the room, or even like if it's someone who sits next to you at work. I mean, when people worked in actual offices, no, maybe that person had a terrible day. Their baby spit up on them, or maybe they just don't talk much, right? We apply all of these stories to everything. And 98% of the time, they're just not true. Our brain is trying to come up with something to fill in the gaps, and it's usually negative.
Right. Well, I think too, like we've kind of talked about this from the people pleasing perspective too. I think when you're someone who maybe feels like you're a people pleaser, want to be liked, like those types of things, these types of thoughts I think come a lot easier too, because there's that like gap in time where you're like, okay, what is this person thinking about me? I want them to like me. I want them to, feel included or whatever the case may be. It comes, yeah, in waves like that then.
It's so fun. And even just talking about this right now, it all seems so ridiculous in some ways. I mean, not everybody's going to like talking about mindfulness, right? Like cognitively, of course that's the case. But in the moment, it's just like, oh, they must not like me. What?
Yeah. Well,
I
yeah.
mean,
And I think,
someone's talking about, property taxes. It doesn't matter how nice the person is. I don't really want to listen, right? Okay, sorry, I interrupted you. You were going to say
no,
something.
no, no. I was just going to say, I think like the biggest personal growth for me is probably just being able to separate that, of being able to separate kind of yourself from what's happening in the situation. So again, if someone's upset in a situation, it's not like they're mad at me. You talked about like the million things that happen before people leave their house in the morning that could be, causing them to feel this way. So I really think kind of that piece, which to me ties back to emotional intelligence, is emotional intelligence and empathy, right? So once you understand that everyone has their own stuff they're dealing with and the world isn't thinking about you, and not like in a selfish way, but like that's sometimes how we show up and think, then it just opens the space to be like, however they're showing up has something to do with what's going on in their life. And then instead of being upset by it, you're like, man, if they're showing up like that today, I wonder what is going on with them. Like they must be going through something hard. And it gives you, again, that empathy piece to say, this isn't about me at all. And I wonder what's going on with them.
Right. Has nothing to do with me. It's all about them. Yeah, absolutely. When you decided to start Hello Mindful You, what was the reaction that you got from people? Was anyone like, oh, wait a minute, you can't do that because in the work world, that's not a thing? Just in general, what was the feedback that you received?
Um, so I feel like this is a good question. Um, I feel like mostly like supportive for me, I guess personally. So I felt supported in that decision. Still today, I feel like some people don't get it. And I think that's okay for me. And I sometimes struggle in this space, right? Like I want to continue to support leaders and I want to support people's personal growth. And so much of how we see the world is those are two separate things. And so for me, they're really not. We can say we want to show up at work as this entirely different person, but the reality is we still bring all of our stuff to work as much as we try to hide it. And sometimes that hiding it piece of kind of showing up fake happy, fake okay is almost harder than just showing up and saying, hey, I'm actually not okay today. And here's kind of what's going on. I'm just going to need some space, or hey, this project that's not priority, can we just reschedule it? Because I feel like I would come in with a way better headspace if we could do this next week instead of today, those types of things. And so I would say kind of the the doubt or the like lack of support just comes from some of those traditional perspectives of this is professional development and this is personal development. And so I think that's one of the things that I've tried to be intentional about in some ways, with also being realistic that I do feel the pressure to kind of pick a space. But to me, that's the whole point, is I want to create less space between those two things. And I think that's what people are craving. We want to work at workplaces that understand we're human beings, and we need to have some of these conversations in the workplace to be able to show up and move work forward. We can't just pretend. Emotional intelligence doesn't exist. I think the more that we can incorporate those things into the workplace, the better conversations we can have. I think about, meetings where you have someone who's super reactive and yelling and showing up like that in a meeting. okay, that person obviously is low in emotional intelligence. And so if we did invest in the skill building for our staff, for our team, for our leaders, that conversation would look entirely different. And so a lot of the work is thinking about, instead of reacting, how are you more intentional with your decisions and your choices? How do you become more resilient as a leader in navigating change? And so when we talk about it in those ways, I can't imagine a lot of organizations that wouldn't want to be on board with some of that. And so I think it's just figuring out what is the right language to use in certain spaces that makes sense to those individuals and their, whether it's in their organization, in their personal lives. Um, and again, if someone's not ready, it's a two-way street, right? And so if you're really not ready to kind of do some self exploration, it might not be the right time for you, because I can't just like make you mindful. Um,
Right.
I can share things with you that can help with those things. But at the end of the day, you have to make the choice to show up for yourself differently. And so if you're not ready to do that, it's not going to stick. Yeah.
I love how you said you're trying to, I don't know specifically how you said, but basically you're trying to reduce the space between personal and professional. And it is funny. I mean, we take ourselves everywhere we go. Yet there's kind of this unstated expectation that, you be work Megan versus home Megan, but it's your same brain, your same stories, your same beliefs, everything that you're taking everywhere. Uh, so one of the reasons why you started Hello Mindful You is because you were dealing with so much personal stuff at work, feeling there like you had to be guarded to some extent, right? And just kind of pretend, oh, everything's okay, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. I mean, there were a few people I kind of shared some things that were going on with. But other than that, no, I kind of kept showing up as I knew that, like, I quote unquote should. Um, and yeah, it just became really exhausting. It became exhausting to show up and have to keep it all together 100% of the time at work, and then feel like I was letting my family down because I would have to come home and crash.
Hmm.
And so that I I value being who I am and being authentic. And so it was so hard. And I'm a pretty open person also. And so to show up at work and pretend that everything was fine when it really wasn't just became super exhausting. And so, I mean, a, there were a lot of times where I thought, like, do I just need to leave my job? Like, maybe I just need to leave the workforce. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Like, I don't know how women in particular are doing the things. Like, I have two little kids. I'm dealing with an illness. I'm trying to show up in all of the ways that I did before all of these things. And it's exhausting. And, but like all I saw was other people doing the same thing. And so I just thought something was wrong with me, right? Like everyone else is doing it. And so I remember, going to work one day or coming home, I just remember kind of being by my laundry room, which is where we walk into our house, and thinking to myself, like, oh, I feel like I have everything in my life I've wanted. I have my kids, I have a good career, I have all of the things, and I don't feel super happy. Um, I feel like I'm just going through the motions, and it felt terrible, right? Like, is this what life is? Because if it is, like, this is not what I signed up for. And so, again, really kind of the turning point of me just starting to reevaluate everything. I shifted my mindset from wanting to leave the workforce to, okay, how do I take care of myself first? Maybe there's some things that I can do internally, right? Being a high achiever. Okay, I don't have to show up at 120% every day, because like I'm not getting bonus points for it. And so if I show up and do the best I can with what I have for that day, that's okay. And so I started to check in with kind of like my mental capacity, right? If you're someone who has always been really hardworking, really drove for those like standard success measures, right? I'm a first generation college student. So it was really important to me to go to college, get a good job, and do all of those things because that's been ingrained in my brain, right? My parents didn't go to college. And so I just remember hearing like, this is something that is going to help you be successful in your life. So that's like my definition of success. And, yeah, as you have all of those things and you're like, okay, um, is this really what I want? Um, I lost my train of thought of what the question was.
Well, did you? And I don't know what the question was either, Megan. So it's fine.
Okay, cool. We're
Um,
on the same page. So, um,
did you feel a little bit of
at work, kind of
oh,
like
good.
having to hide things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes. So I started like thinking about the business and okay, I thought I was going to leave the workforce, but then I was like, you know what? If I'm feeling this way, as I started sharing more with other people shared they felt the same way. And so I felt really compelled to do something about that. I saw the benefits that I was experiencing personally from just really focusing on my internal world and how much that changed how I'm showing up. I'll say different times, not a lot of things have changed in my life from my job to other things, but how I'm showing up each day, it feels entirely different. And it's because of how I talk to myself, the space I allow myself, how I actually check in with myself to say, what do I actually need? Do I need to keep doing XYZ or do I actually just need to rest today? Rest was not something that I just did. Right. And so um, I think kind of all of those things led me to want to be in the space to make an impact. That's why I care about being in the kind of like organizational and leadership space. I know there's other people that feel this way, and I want them to know they're not alone. And I feel like you can be very successful in however you're defining that success. Um, and do lots of impactful things. Like we need people to be in communities and be in workplaces. We don't need everyone to leave their job, but we have to do something different. Like we can't be a completely exhausted, burnt out workforce. Or people in general. Like there's supposed to be joy in life. There's supposed to be rest. Um, and from everything we know, like those are all positive things that impact us. They impact our workplace. I was at there was an Impact CR event at the Marion Library, and there was a panel there. And I remember one of the panelists asking the question to the group, where do your best ideas come to you? And like the group was on a walk, in the shower. Someone said on the toilet, like variety of answers. And she responded with, it doesn't matter how long we would have sat here and got different responses. Nobody would have ever said their office, sitting in front of the computer. And so again, to me, that's just another signal that we're looking for space. You need space to be creative. Why do you do offsite retreats? Yes, it's something fun, but it gets you out of your normal space. And so a lot of the things that I speak about and I coach about is like, again, these little things. Can you go outside for lunch? Can you take a walk? If you're listening to some sort of professional development, listen to it and walk. Do something, again, that's good for you, but also it just gives you a break from kind of the day-to-day normal grind, quote unquote. So
I think what's hardest about all of this is one, as a high achiever, like you said, you were given it 120%. Um, a high achiever's 100% is really 120. And we're a little bit narcissistic in some ways in that we think, okay, well, and this sounds terrible as I'm saying it out loud, which, a lot of things do, but it's like, oh, well, other people need rest. Other people, need to do these things, but I shouldn't have to. Did you ever feel like that?
well, yeah, for sure. One of the things that kind of came to my mind, another thing that I kind of picked up over in the last year is doing some somatic exercises. Just again, kind of this like checking in mind body. And one of the things in the practices is the instructor will always say, in the laziest way possible. And I'm like, that always felt super triggering. Like, what am I doing that's lazy? Like, I'm doing an exercise. This should be productive, right? And I've had to sit with that. And I kind of like, I've gotten more used to it now, but I'm like, oh my gosh, Megan, like this this is bothering you. And now I kind of laugh about it when I hear it, but it's always in the laziest way possible. And it's like, who does something in the laziest way possible? But again, it's just thinking about it differently. Like the goal of everything isn't to be to those extremes, and rest is okay. That's something I've definitely had to remind myself of. And then also just knowing when you do give yourself some rest, sometimes your best ideas come to you, all of those things. And so, yeah, again, just kind of disconnecting this, your worth and productivity is a space I've spent a lot of time in for myself of, I don't have to be productive to be worthy.
Oh, oh my gosh. Yes, so true. And just the fact that the the statement "in the laziest way possible" can be triggering, right?
Right.
Like, what? But I'm with you. It's like, why on earth would I wanna be lazy? I don't
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
understand
Just like so
that.
much negative comes with that word,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, yeah, it's funny because I've thought that for so long. I feel like this is the first time I said it out loud, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I think it every time I hear it.
I went and did yoga with a friend, and I think it was one of the first times I had done yoga. It must have been because when we got to Shavasana, am I even saying that right? Anyway, the last thing, you're supposed to just kinda lay there. And I thought I was gonna lose my mind. And that's supposed to be the most peaceful, at rest, like, I didn't know what was happening in my mind. I was being lazy because nothing productive was happening. There was no explanation, and it felt like I was there for, like, an hour in this pose when it was probably, like, a minute or something. But it's one thing, I mean, I knew, "Oh, I should relax. I should all do all these things." But I didn't know how, and I felt like, "Okay, I'm supposed to shift my mindset," which was the kind of the equivalent to me of like, "Oh, have a positive attitude." Like, you just snap your fingers and it happens. So, what tips do you have for people like me, like you, who just couldn't sit still? Like, you knew from an intellectual standpoint, yeah, I should do this, but you just cannot.
Yeah. So one of the things I think about, like when you talked about, oh, I think for self care, I should do these things, right? Massage, yoga. So I think really just checking in on why you're doing them. Like if you feel like you should do them because that's what everyone else does for self care, that might not be the self care for you. So for me personally, I really kind of focused in on what do I actually like to do? Like what feels good to me instead of, everyone's got their own routine that works for them, which is awesome. But I think that was kind of my mistake so much of my life that I tried to find what worked for other people, but never really actually leaned in to say, what do I actually like to do? And it turns out I like to do somatic exercises in the laziest way possible because that feels really relaxing to me now. Like I love it. Um, and so the other thing I think about is the goal, again, as a high achiever, like the goal is never perfection. And so that's what I think when people are struggling to slow down your mind or show up in a meditation, yoga, a quiet, calm space, is you're thinking that like your brain should be calm. And that's just never the case. Like my brain is never calm. I feel like I have the loudest mind, whether it's good things or bad things, right? Like it might be ideas or thinking you should do all of these things different, whatever. Like my brain is always going a million miles an hour. So in those types of practices, if you're trying them, again, the goal isn't to be perfect and the goal isn't to have your mind in this perfect, peaceful state, but going back to the noticing. So when you're practicing and you notice your mind wandering, or you notice your mind saying, I should be doing all these things, whatever it is outside of the practice you're doing, it's just bringing your mind back to the current present moment. So everything in mindfulness is really just around the idea of how do we show up to be present on purpose in this moment. Again, that non-judgmentally. So one, you're not judging yourself for not being able to stay focused in the space. Nobody can. Some people are better at it than others, but those people that are better at it have practiced it. We just assume we should be able to show up and like turn the switch. And that's just not how it works. It's a habit that you build. And one of the things I like to share with some of my clients or anyone that's kind of, again, just inquiring about the practice is set a timer and just do nothing for 5 minutes. And it's going to feel so uncomfortable.
Just
Like,
hearing those
yeah,
words is uncomfortable.
right. But it's just kind of being able. So just like anything, we talk about growth and being able to sit with discomfort. Like this is the same space. If you want to grow in your inner capacity, you have to be able to sit with some of the discomfort that comes with trying to quiet your mind, trying to not be productive 100% of the time. It's uncomfortable. And I think that's the piece sometimes we miss when talking about it because we see people so peaceful and so relaxed. And you're like, yeah, I can never have that. But we don't see is the growth that it takes to get there or the days that they're, constantly having to bring themselves back because they're distracted, thinking about what's for supper, when's my next dentist appointment, what kid do I need to schedule an appointment for? Like, again, the million things. So it's not about being perfect. It's about building the habit and being consistent with the habit.
And I suspect, Megan, that when you started this work, you didn't just start meditating for 60 minutes each morning and you didn't do that every day and then suddenly you were mindful.
No, absolutely not. And I don't even do that today. Like, would I like that in my life at some point? Yes, I think that sounds wonderful. But realistically, I just know that's not the season or space of life that I'm in. And so instead of, again, being in that space, if I can't do it, or if I can't do this thing and be perfect at it, then I'm not going to do anything. I've really been in the space of still this like 15 minutes. If I can be consistent, because what happens with consistency, especially with your mind, is you start doing things automatically. So I'm not thinking about noticing my negative thoughts. I just notice them. I don't have to think I'm going to notice my thoughts. Um, so the habit's there and the mind then automatically starts to think that way. And so my advice for anybody is don't let the time be the constraint. Start with what you have. If it's 5 minutes, if it's a minute, do it consistently. It doesn't have to be big to be impactful. And then again, there's tons of research and information out there about compounding habits, micro habits, those types of things. And so, same kind of concept with this work. How do you just start and then build from there?
And if it is inconsistent initially, that's okay too, right? Because so many of us are it has to be this or that. Like, I mean, when you were talking about being in your role and feeling like, oh, I guess I have to quit, right? Or it has to be one thing or the other. And I think that's the case for mindfulness too. It's, oh, okay, well, I meditated for 2 days, or maybe not even meditated. I thought about my thoughts when I was washing my hands. And then I forgot on the third day, and then we just quit. Like a diet, right? It's like, oh, well, I guess I'll eat a box of cookies because I blew that, right? Um, and
Yeah,
that doesn't mean you have to stop. It just means, oh, you missed a day. Keep going.
that's so interesting that you say that because another person I'm connected with, her name is Kira Doyle. Her business is called Meeting Your Magic. And so I love to take some of her courses around human design, around like manifesting. And so one of the things she was talking about is this like kind of extremes that we live in where if you start something and you stop, you can't just like go back to day 2 when you miss something. You have to start over. Another example she gave, like you're in a business and you have this idea and someone starts your idea, you just can't do it because somebody else has done it now, right?
Yes.
But she's like, that's so crazy, right? Like, think about how many businesses there are that are doing similar things, but that's our thought pattern. Our thought pattern is you either do it every single day or you can't do it at all. And so, yeah, I think just remembering, kind of giving ourselves grace when we're developing a new habit and knowing that, yes, consistency and is more valuable than the length of time, I think is important, but you're not starting over, right? So if I miss an entire week of doing something for myself in terms of a mindfulness practice, I'm still starting from a couple years worth of work that I've done. You're never starting over. You're always starting from a place of greater knowledge. And so I think, yeah, reminding that we don't have to live in extremes.
And do you feel like you are now living in a state of bliss without any sort of chaos now because you've been doing this long enough, Megan?
Oh man, no. So it's kind of funny. So I just got a different watch. So I feel like I've had my Apple Watch, which is just like super distracting. So again, you think about kind of like being present and when your watch is buzzing constantly, I feel like that pulls me right out. And so I found a watch that is then like, so no notifications, but tracks how you're responding to stress, which I thought was super interesting. So funny thing, I noticed that my greatest stress responses are when I'm around my kids.
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, my initial thoughts were, does this make me a bad mom? Because like the time that I'm most stressed is when I'm around my kids. And then I thought about it a little more and I was like, well, it totally makes sense. Like when I'm around my kids, like I'm thinking about all the things in my head, right? Like the supper, the appointments, the things, they're talking to me. They're usually both talking to me at the same time. And I know I'm someone who like feels overwhelmed when there is, again, so many things going on. I'm trying to concentrate. We probably have the music on. There's probably an iPad on. Like it is just an overwhelming, overstimulating environment. So I'm like, okay, like this kind of makes sense. But then kind of the reassuring a piece for me and going back to like, why do I do this in my life was when I looked at it overall, it showed me that overall my stress recovery was good, right? So it means I'm experiencing stress in those situations, but I'm able to get myself back out of it fairly quickly. And so it just took me back to, again, not the extremes. The goal is to not ever have stress in my life. The goal is to be able to manage it effectively. And that's what I've been able to do by the work I've like the inner work that I've done over the past couple of years. I can effectively manage my stress. Where in the past, I remember thinking, man, I hope one more thing doesn't drop because I don't know how much more I can carry. And so I don't feel that heaviness anymore. I feel really confident in my ability to move through things. And I feel resilient. And I also feel much better about feeling my feelings. So I think a heavy weight that was on me was just not allowing myself to process my emotions, right? From the infertility, from all of the things that I was just holding on to, just by allowing myself to kind of experience and change my relationship with emotions, where whether it's sadness, anger, whatever it is, it's okay to feel those things and they don't have to stay with me forever. Kind of my parent win for this week after I realized again my kids cause me stress was we were
You just
driving and
realized that this week because of the watch. Yeah.
well now I have data to like prove it, right? So I'm like, oh man. But as we were driving, my daughter, who's 3, I can't remember what we were talking about, but she's like, oh yeah, mom, kind of like sadness and anger, they don't have to stay with us forever. And then we can be happy again. And I was like, yes, like just like that. So when I hear those things, it's just my reminder of, again, doing the work on myself rubs off on my kids. Like they see how you're showing up for yourselves. And that means so much to me.
Oh, that is so fantastic. It's interesting. I wonder, it would have been interesting to see if you had had this watch, 10 years ago, what the results would have been, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's super interesting. But again, I just went back to like I talk a lot about how again data is just information, and that's all it is. And so I had to again, it's a constant battle of self talk. It's not easy, and so I had to remind myself of those things. And so I think the thing that I would say with anything, whether it's just learning more about yourself, a mindfulness practice, is just remembering that you're still going to have negative thoughts. Like, I don't know if that ever goes away. But again, your ability to get out of that space and recoup is different. And so, that headspace that I was in, I probably would have dwelled on that for a couple of days for sure, where it was like a matter of hours, right? I had the thought of like, wow, this timeline seems to be lining up that it's like all the times I'm with my kids in the morning and at night and okay. And then I was like, man, again, I feel bad about this. Why don't, like, again, it just was way quicker of moving through that. And I didn't feel as terrible about myself as I probably would have in the past. So,
And I love that you said that too. It's not a matter of getting rid of stress because when we're alive, we have it. It's just
right.
a matter of reducing it and um, just being more resilient and just recovering from it quicker. I know when a lot of my life, I just felt like, well, this is just life. You're supposed to be chronically stressed. It's just I'm adulting, I guess. And then when I retire, I hope that I have less. I don't know. I was just like,
I could just never
how
get
do I
on
do
board
this?
with that, right? I mean, I feel like that's probably why you've been pursuing your passion in your business is like, yeah, I can't just no, like I can't do it, right? Like I'm not going to be on that path and maybe again it looks different for everyone, but one of the things I think about like with the stress is for me before I kind of started looking inward a little bit more, it's really easy to blame stress on things in your life, like external things.
Hmm.
And so I think just kind of an important reminder is when you start taking back some of the control of stress in your life, it really gives you power. So things that I used to maybe stress about at work or in my personal life, when I decided that wasn't something I was going to lose sleep over anymore, I gave myself more relief. I gave myself mental capacity back. And so I just think that's always an important thing that it can be easy to say stress is constantly driven by all these external factors, but we do play a role in it too, which is good because that means we have the power to change how, what our relationship with that stress is.
Ah, so well said. So well said. And when I realized, wait a minute, I'm the common denominator in all of this. Huh.
Right.
My immediate response was, well, crap. But then, just like you said, it gives you power. It's just like, wait a minute, I actually can do something about this. I just need to, figure out what that looks like, but it's possible.
Yep, for
That,
sure.
that's awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. This has been fantastic. Okay, I have a couple questions for you before we scoot. One, what would current Megan tell the younger version of Megan if you could go back and share something, knowing what you know now?
So um, I think I would just say like I'll find my fit or I'll find my space. So again, I mentioned kind of this first generation college student, so felt a lot of pressure to go to college, but also not in a bad way. Like I wanted to. I knew that's kind of the path I wanted to go, but I never knew what I wanted to do. I majored, I have a bachelor's in finance, and I just remember a lot of people being like, "Oh, are you going to be a teller? What are you going to do?" I was like, "I don't know, sure." I just, you don't really know what's all out there. And I feel like I kind of just did a lot of things just because maybe someone else was doing them, and didn't really know like my own path. And so I feel like over the past probably 5, 7 years, like I've really done some inner work to understand who am I and what do I really like to do. And then felt really comfortable showing up in spaces like that. And so I think just reminding myself that, yeah, you'll kind of find your people, you'll find your groove. I've always felt that like the confidence that I can do anything I put my mind to, but also then when you get to doing it, it feels a lot more intimidating, right? So I would say just, yeah, trust yourself and you're going to find your fit. It's a lot of believing in yourself.
It's interesting too how you said, you felt a lot of pressure because I think we all feel this pressure, but it's not necessarily someone saying to us, you have to go to college or here's the expectation. And I know college is just an example and you wanted to do it too, but I think so often the expectations that we put on ourselves, we feel like other people are putting them on us and maybe they're not. Because back to the fact that nobody cares cares that much about us, right? They're thinking about their own lives.
Right. Well, and I think about it too, again, like as a parent, you want better for your kids, and that comes from the best of intentions.
Mhm.
But how do you communicate that in a way that doesn't feel like pressure for them too? Um, because like when my parents talk about college, it was just like, hey, we didn't go to college, and we hear that college is the way that you can have a better life. Because you won't have to work as hard as we did. I think that's what every parent wants. And so I think about that from just how am I speaking to my kids? I've already brainwashed my son to loving freedom and weekends. And so he said to me the other day, he's like, Mom, wouldn't it be cool if we had work day, work day, work day, work day, and then the rest of our life was the weekend? I was like, yes, I love it. how do we do this? Like, let's work together and make this happen. And so we'll see. But I keep telling him, I'm like, I want to work for you someday, man. So what are we going to do?
And remind me how old your kids are.
So he's 5 and my daughter's 3.
Okay. So you have a little bit of time to figure that out. He has some
Yeah,
time.
we have a little bit of time, but it's super cute. So, yeah, again, just kind of disconnecting. Like, I want my kids to experience life, and obviously they're going to have some sort of income at some point, but how do you just kind of shape their world and through experiences? I think you can learn so much about life just by, learning from other people, cultural experiences. I know you like to travel, and that's something that you've shared with me. And so, yeah, just all of those things.
Love that. Oh my gosh. That's so cute that he said that. Love that. I was going to also have you share where people can find you, but that made me realize we should talk about Life and Lattes a little bit.
Yeah.
So Megan and I do this thing called Life and Lattes. Basically what we do is we show up at a coffee shop and we tell people, hey, we're going to be at this coffee shop. That's about as formal as it gets, but we have a topic and just invite people to come talk to us about it. And it's a lot of fun. So, go ahead and share anything about that you want to share, Megan, and also where people can find you.
Yeah. So Life and Lattes has been pretty awesome. It's a super great way to connect with other people in the community. I think from the 3 or 4 events that we did, we kicked it off last fall. Something like that.
Something like that. It's within the last year.
Yeah, it's been really great.
5 years, within the last 1 to 5 years. Yeah.
Right. But no, it's been really great. I think some of the questions we get from people, we'll always put it out on LinkedIn and create an event just so everyone can find the information. But sometimes we'll get asked if you have to RSVP, but truly it's very casual. We set a time. You don't have to stay the whole time. Come as you can and leave when you need to is what we usually make sure we communicate. And it's just a really fun time to get to know some other people who are focused on growing themselves and making connections in the community. So our next one is next week on Wednesday, the 11th, I believe. At 11.
You know what? This isn't going to go out before then, but so people will know that
Okay,
it was on February 11th. But we try to have it every month. We didn't in January because, it's January in Iowa and, neither Megan nor I enjoys winter. So
Right.
that was hard. But also just recovery from the holidays. But yeah, so we'll probably be doing another one in March, probably in April. And it's so fun too because each time it's been different people, which is a ton of.
It's been really cool. And yeah, I think we both, made new connections. And I think that's a cool thing about doing it together is people come because they know Sherry, people come because they know me, and then we get to know other people, which is great. In terms of where you can find me, so I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I have an Instagram account at Hello Mindful You. And then I also have my website, which is hellomindfulyou.com.
Fantastic. And you are just, it's so funny. I remember when I met you, I remember you saying something like, oh, I'm still trying to figure out la, 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 whatever it was. And I said, well, when did you start your business? You started like a minute before you spoke at this event. And I'm like, oh, you're still figuring that out? Yeah. So I'm amazed, Megan, by how much you have done in such a short time, and you're doing the day job thing, and it's just amazing. So I love that you're putting all this out into the world, and I'm so appreciative that our paths crossed and continue to cross, and all the things.
Oh, same. Yes. I'm so happy I met you. I appreciate your mentorship. You've been wonderful about connecting me with other people and just, again, being willing to partner. It's super fun. Being in a space where you're, working solo is sometimes hard. And so I think it's fun to be able to make connections and, yeah, help bring our work into the world.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Megan, for being here. And thank you everyone for being here. Follow Megan. She is awesome. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player, tell your friends, and leave us a review. Follow me on my social media platforms highlighted in the show notes, and get in touch with me at the-mindset.com. Share the topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. We'll see you next time. Design and differentiate your Dash your way and make today amazing.